Ortelius and Emporous architecture meeting. I'm going to dive right into Kat. Do you have any update from Alex? I haven't talked to him in a while. Have you?
Um, so he just took a last minute vacation. He was out the last week and a half. Um, and he has a lot of his time going into the Emporous realm of things, but I'm not sure that Emporous specifically is getting it.
Got it.
Technically, I am closer on my demo,
Cool.
but not nearly as far along as you would like.
No problem. Are you is the are you ending up writing a lot of missing pieces?
No, so I'm not writing a ton directly related to the project right now. I'm barely keeping my head above water um, with day job, but I am conveniently turning day job into cycles going to that occasion, and
Nice.
it's adding up. And conveniently, it'll be a push button to actually do the thing. Literally, go to the repo, push the button, it opens it in code spaces, and everything's running.
Awesome. All right. Cool. Just catching up here. All right. Excellent. And do you have a a time frame like in shooting for like in the next month or something for wrapping that
I
up
know
or
that the main piece that I need is expected for something actually on the clock in the next 5 weeks. I have a medical outage in February and another family thing just happened. But I'm plugging away at it as I can.
awesome. All right, cool. And I'll try to touch base with Alex offline and see where he's at with because I know he was pretty close to doing a proof of concept as well with the Emporous stuff. So I'll touch base with him. I'll put that on my list to do. All right. So one of the things on the Ortelius side, we wanted to take a look at, based on our conversations from a couple weeks ago, was the UI UX design. And Kate sent over some ideas that she had. I haven't had a chance to dive into each one of those, Kate, yet, so I'm going to punt on that till next week. But one of the things I want to kind of take a look at today is working backwards from the data that we're collecting to make sure that we have the data that we need at the fine level detail for like a component version or a specific open source package. And then once we know we have all the data that we want to collect, be able to render that in the new web interface. And then once we have that, go and start working our way backwards up to like lists of the what lists we want to create. We want a list of all the high vulnerability packages that exist, for example, or and work our way backwards. Because I think it's a lot easier to have all the data that we know that we're working with, get that kind of laid out, and then go to the next level up of creating those lists and navigations around that. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Any objections to that? All right. zoom out of the way here. So some of the things that I've done is this is our just a simple component version. I've been taking I've updated the what we called our CLI to be our current one for the current release of Ortelius is in Python. I made a Golang version of that. And because just easier interface with everything. So that Golang version is able to go out and grab some information like the SBOMs and things like that, and some of the Git commit information. So what we're seeing here is some of the high level uh, categories I've kind of created on the boxes. And this will be, you can do either light or dark mode. I'll just do dark mode. It's easier to see. So I've actually broken out the details into the existing boxes more or less. So basically the catalog details, who the service owner is, their information, when was this component version created. One of the things I did recognize that were missing in this list is where the build actually took place. What was it done? Was it on a Jenkins server, or was it in a GitHub Action or Circle CI, etc.? And then I've moved our licenses and vulnerabilities kind of to the top, because we want to call those out right away. So in this case, for this component version, these are the packages that are being found through the SBOMs. I have to swap the columns here between the license and the language as part of that. One of the other things I recognize that we should probably add, if you look at CVEs and stuff, they usually have a version that this was fixed in. So, for example, the Snake YAML version 129 is the one that's broken. And I have to see if the CVE information coming from OSV Dev is able to tell us which version was this fixed in. Was it fixed in 1.4? Is it still outstanding? Those type of things. I think we should add as another column. So people can come in here and say, oh, yes, we have this is broken and we need a bump up to 1.4, for example, to get the fix in. Any questions so far? All right, cool. The next section I kind of did, and I wasn't sure when we kind of look at the page at the high level if we want to make these sections collapsible. So if anybody thinks we should have like just a collapsible list for each row or a set of rows, let me know. And if you can hunt down some examples of other websites that do that type of thing, it would be great to have something to reference. So if there's something that we need, there's a good format people like. The other thing we could do is tabs. In a real old version of Ortelius, we used to have a bunch of tabs. I don't think the tabs worked as well because it hid a lot of the information. And if people didn't know to click on the tab, they never saw the data. The
Steve,
next
is that the
section.
color scheme? Sorry, is that the black and orange? Is that the color scheme so far? It looks
No, it was just a random one.
I like it.
That is a good point. We do need to know. We need two color schemes. So we need a color scheme for the light mode, and we need a color scheme for the dark mode.
Okay, I like black and orange, but I mean, that's just me.
So if anybody wants to go out and throw out some color schemes, let me know. We can just Yeah, Arvin.
I will do that, but I like the orange one.
Yeah, and if you put either put probably the easiest thing would be put it into the dev channel of Discord, the color schemes that you come up with. All of the layout and stuff is based on Material UI. So
Or we can create a slider and the user can select which color scheme they want.
yeah, and there's ways because Material UI has a lot of pre-programmed color schemes. So you can see here, just based on your primary color, it'll go ahead and have the associated subcolors for highlighting and things like that. Basically, it's a bunch of themes. So the theme methodology is already there. So what we really need to do is pick some of the primary color paletting on the theming. And let me drop this in the chat as well. One of the nice things I found with using the Svelte is it's based on Material UI, which has all the things figured out about what a button should look like, those type of things, what a radio button should look like. And Material UI came out from Google. So they've done a lot of research on that front. So the more we can pick the standard widgets from Material, the better off we're going to be. And same with the theming. And it looks like there's a playground to play with on that level. So poke around on that side, Arvin, and let me know what you find for themes that you like. And again, we will need a theme for the light and the dark. I know we have our Ortelius alien is at the bright neon green. I don't think we should make this neon green and black. I think it would be just a little bit overpowering. But we have to keep that in consideration as well.
Yeah,
What about
I will do
80s
that.
80s Luma green?
Yeah.
So is there a chance that anybody wants to do a working session on this so we could just play with the colors for a bit?
Oh, I like that black and orange. That's nice.
We
So-
can
But
do
I'm not a
something
UI
like,
person.
let me create a playground first, and then we can do a session and in which we can change the color.
Okay, so Arvin, we'll put that on your to-do list to go out and pick a couple of the base, some ideas on the theming, and we'll do a working session based on that. Let me know when you get close, and then I can schedule the meeting.
Yeah, in which branch is this so I can clone it locally?
Yes,
And
so you can, I think, based on you'd have to see what this playground is over here that they already have out there. So I think you may be able to just use the playground here, and there may be some other theming type of playgrounds that we can work with without having to go in and change the themes right away for the current UI. And
No,
just yeah.
I'm thinking about I can clone it locally and I will run that on my playground, on my
Yep.
local version.
Yep.
So that is
So
we
this is
can-
actually running off of a kind cluster and connected up to my Arango database. On that front, I will have to, Sasha, I'm probably going to reach out to you to do some zero stack to share my database with Arvin and stuff.
Then it's okay. I will
Alright.
create a sample application and I will do that
Okay.
because then like running whole CI/CD stuff,
Yep.
running the Kubernetes holder, which will take a lot of time. That's not good.
Yeah, the basically right now, we have the Helm charts to do an installation of, I think, 4 microservices to run this in kind. So it's pretty quick to get up and going. Like I said, the database part to get the data in here is where you just need to connect to my database, or I can show you how to load stuff.
No, it's fine. For color, I will do my research. And this will gonna be our main platform.
Yeah.
This is looking good.
Kind of like the next row I had was some of the Git repo information. So I kind of organized it right now as the high level details, the high level vulnerabilities and licenses so when people come into the page, this is above the fold. And then we get into the more gory details of the Git repo, the commit details, the Git activity. One of the things that we're going to run into is like you see here, we're not going to have boxes that are all going to be, have enough lines to fill out all the boxes. So if we need to do some adjusting to make, fill this space with the same color, things like that, we'll have to figure out if we want to address that. Ignore the data here. I just is loading in the same data repeated times. So that's why. So the README, the Open API, the license are basically just going to be boxes that we are going to have that data in. Some of the data that I recognize that we are missing, kind of put this on the list. I've been able to figure out with our workflows when we build our Docker images how to use 2 things. One, there's a build kit that we've enabled that will generate the SBOM automatically from the Docker build. So Docker has a flag to generate the SBOM instead of running a SIFT or another external SBOM tool. So that has been enabled. We're able to produce the SBOM using Docker natively. As part of that, I've also been able to figure out how to do basically, I think it's a cosign signing of the Docker images that's keyless. So you don't have to have a public key at that level. And we're able to, because of that, because we're signing the Docker images now, we can actually get the attestations and the provenance. The provenance right now, it's a little weird because it doesn't really say that like this person created this. What it does is it points back to the workflow that created it. So it's kind of like a weird backward chaining of who did what, that you gotta work your way all the way back to like the workflows and the Git commits and stuff like that to get a true provenance of who did what and when. Again, the signature at that level, the public key. So if they're not using a keyless signature, there's going to be a public key somewhere out there to confirm the signature is valid. And so that's some of the stuff that we need to add. Also, at the Git commit level, you can do signatures with your GPG key. And that's another thing that we need to bring in at that level. One of the things for us to be able to do some AI down the road is we need a copy of the workflow file. So when we produce this artifact, we need to grab the workflow that was actually used to produce that artifact. And other things, one I just realized, we probably need the OpenSSF scorecard data.
So Steve, it occurs to me as I watch this that something would be useful, and I think Kate was sort of nudging us in this direction, is the notion of a user of a particular type needs to do certain tasks. And I think we need to start thinking about, I want to be able to, and how is that exposed and facilitated in the UI?
Yep, that's exactly going to be the next step. I wanted to make sure that so for example, we want to make sure I am a developer, and I want to make sure that my workflow is secure. You know, my supply chain is secure. And one of the things to be able to make that show that to the developer is to add this missing data for like the scorecard, for example. So I don't think right now we have all the data. We're collecting all the data that we need to fulfill the needs of the different personas.
We probably aren't, but I think starting from what we think those needs are is a good idea, so that
Yep.
we can then say, okay, what data is needed to, in fact, support those. I have to say, a developer who actually thinks about, is my software supply chain secure, would be in my book anyway, a pretty remarkably unusual developer.
Yeah, exactly. So for this session, I just wanted to make sure that we got all the data that we know about being collected. And then I think, like you said, Tony, go from the other angle. What are our personas, and make sure that the data for those personas is also being captured. Because when you start thinking about the different personas, that we're going to have to collect some more data and cross-reference the two lists, basically. So I think the next session,
I think this has been very useful, Steve.
yeah. And I think that our next session that we do, and I'd like to do it next week, would be that looking at it from that direction, picking what our personas are and making sure we know what those personas want out of the solution. So just from what we know today, is there any additional information that we know that we're going to need based on just our current version that we're running and some of the stuff that we want to do in the future? I know, Arvin, you were talking about open telemetry.
Yes, we still need to figure out like which data to use and if it's UI to use, like the Zipkin or Jigger. And also, if we like apply it to all of our microservice, we are going to collect a lot of data. We have to manage it also.
Yep. And some of that is, and there's two ways to look at that. Do we need to import the data, or we need to point to the data?
We have to point to the data.
So those are some of the things, and even like in the Emporous side, Emporous would be containing data that we can point to. So it's kind of like we're going to be doing both on that front.
Yeah, I think we can do like the Emporous integration first, then figure out which data we need to point or collect.
Was there anything else on the open telemetry side that we needed to look at?
We have to research about it.
Okay. Another one that was, what was it called? Zap proxy. So for dynamic, I think it's that it, DAS. So testing, basically testing side of things. If we want to bring in testing results.
Thus, it is for the application testing.
Yeah.
Then we need some testing guy also for like the
Yeah.
stress load testing and the stress testing stuff.
Yeah, so
If we
like
want.
on the static analysis, that would be like Sonar Cube. And Veracode.
Also look at Deploy. It's like a next level testing tool that's coming out. It's still in it's still being worked on, but it looks pretty cool.
Can you drop do you know the link for that, Sasha?
Yeah, I got it here for you.
All right, cool.
I'll put it in the chat, yeah.
Perfect.
And Steve, what are you planning like when we will release the next version?
We're shooting for March to have a release out. What I found is because Svelte is based on templates, it's actually really easy to create the layouts. So that part actually goes really quick, especially when you're using the existing widgets that are out there. If we get into some weird graph that we need to do, that we need to import, that will get a little more complicated and may slow us down there.
We have a lot of time. And what are the number of issues we have to like work on?
Yeah. So, like I said, what I'd like to do is next week, like Tony and Kate were kind of looking at it from a consumer or a persona viewpoint. We need to do that next week. So I propose next Thursday, same time, we go ahead and do that. By then, Kate sent out about what was it, like 8 or 9 screens of how a view from of different data and how to use it. So I need to dive in and look at those and see how far off we're at the data collection point. But we should definitely lay out the different personas. And I'll take a stab at creating a doc with some of the user personas that are obvious. We know that there's a developer. We know there's a DevOps engineer. We know there's SRE, a CISO type of world as well. And then also just regular everyday security folks that need to address things.
So
Hey, Kate, what's up?
We
Yeah,
do
so-
have a call scheduled next week at the same time, so could use that.
Yep. That will be what I'm going to shoot for. Yeah, Kate.
So one of the things that Tracy talked about was threat modeling. And I think that that's going to be really important when we're bringing in the overall view of what we're trying to do, right? It's something that escapes SecOps and, is is really, I think, looking back at the years that I've done this, the biggest problem that we have is that the groups continue to be siloed, whether we're talking applications or database, blah, blah, blah. And it would be so nice to be able to bring everything in and really help all groups do threat modeling from a really easy standpoint. And
Yep.
that might be like this whole pie in the sky, never going to happen. But man, it'd be nice to try.
I
Yeah,
like
and
that. I think that's so cool. Sorry, Steve. Kate, I think
And-
that's so true. Oh,
And that's one of the things I've been working on the last couple of weeks is this is I don't know why they ever designed it this way, but so and they're trying to fix it. So if you have a CVE, that this CVE is a denial of service, for example, and you know that it's in this library. Let's say the HTTP request has this denial of service vulnerability. Now, there is a framework called MITRE ATT&CK that defines the techniques that exploiters can use to get into a system. One of the weird things is that doesn't exist today is that there is no mapping of a CVE to the MITRE ATT&CK techniques. And I found a paper from this group, and they've created a machine learning model to map a CVE over to a MITRE technique. And it's actually a ML solution that takes all the description of what the CVE is, how the CVE is being exploited, or how it acts, basically. It's going to do X, Y, and Z to do its exploitation. So what this allows us to do is to map a CVE to a MITRE technique. And once you have that mapping within MITRE attack framework, you can now say that this technique is only exploitable if you're on an Android phone. So if you're running in Kubernetes, you know that you're not exposed to that CVE because there's no way to exploit it, because it's only exploitable through an Android phone, for example. So I've been working on that, being able to kind of map in the MITRE ATT&CK framework and hook that data, pair that data with what we have on the Ortelius side. Now, what that allow us to do is when somebody says, I've deployed this application to this version, to this environment, we can say, oh, is that environment Kubernetes, or is it a Windows environment, or is it a pure Linux VM environment? And that will allow us to shape some of the paths that need to be kind of put in place. And some of the things that you can do is, for if it's exploitable through something that's running on Windows, do you have a firewall in place, for example, or X, Y, and Z is put in place, and that'll allow us to kind of really show to at a high level, like Kate's saying, what our real exposure is and what our real risk is, and what is the list of things that we need to prioritize to be fixed. Because if we have a vulnerability and we have some CVE that is only exploitable through Android, that could be put real low on our list of things to fix for developers. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah.
So I will add that to the list to make sure I bring in the MITRE framework data. And if anybody knows if there's any other good databases out there, there's like NIST and some of the other ones, but they don't really talk about, they're collecting the CVE stuff, but they're not really talking about how people act to exploit those CVEs.
Yeah, I would agree. I think sometimes NIST is like just one big convoluted mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. What about OWASP? Have you looked at that at all?
I have not looked at OS. Do they have something equivalent to the attack framework?
You know, the only thing I was looking at, Steve, is that I noticed that they have, and I just started looking at them again, like weighted vulnerabilities, and they actually have them weighted. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. I don't know, again, not anything like MITRE. I really like MITRE, and a lot of people understand MITRE. So, at the end of the day, that's, from a threat modeling perspective, but
Yeah.
I think MITRE's
And let me share my screen real quick, and I'll so people can kind of see what I'm talking about. No, wrong one. Sorry. There it is. Where'd my screen go? Come back. So these are, I can't remember. There's your different techniques. I think it adds up to close to over 100 different techniques that can happen. So if we find like denial of service in here. We'll do content injection. So for the technique would be a content injection, and this is how this information here is how we cross-reference with what the description is in the CVE, and then once you have the content we know that the technique is going to be content injection. Then you can look at what do you need to mitigate it. And then if there's other things that you need to have in place for monitoring to make sure you're not, somebody's not exploiting that injection type of process. And then when you get into the mitigations, you can kind of navigate through all this. It creates this big web and mapping of how things are happening. So that's kind of the framework. If you want to play around with it, they do have like this navigator that you can kind of pick and choose. But what ends up happening is what I've seen is this is great, and they have this whole framework that you can go and navigate a particular threat, and you can figure out how to mitigate it and what you need to do for the environments. But it's very manual intensive. And when you're talking about thousands of packages, a person's not going to be able to go through and a security officer is not going to be able to go through it and be able to consume every single CVE that's out there and map to figure out if they're vulnerable or not. And there's whole things that get into your defenses, your techniques. There's even a part that gets on the groups. Is this coming in from Russia? Is it coming in from China? Those type of things. So all of these kind of fit together. And I think it's a great framework, but it's just too manual for people to consume. It's just too time consuming. I mean, if we look back at our simple example, we have 142 packages just for this one component. So a lot of time spent that we want to be able to help people eliminate.
You know, one thing, Steve, and again, for everybody on the team here, and maybe this is just pie in the sky, but customers really look at assets and the risks to those assets. So I remember, you know, when cybersecurity really started to get into, we really started to be impacted by vulnerabilities. And you would have like these all night, you know, patching sessions, and then we would be trying to chase what looked like a high vulnerability, but was like on the pizza menu database or something. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
something in the cafeteria. And you'd spend hours, you know, and it would be nice. I don't know how we could do the whole thing, but if I were to do something, I'd like to know the risk of the asset, like you talked about, like the mobile device and Android and things like that. But somehow, you know, what does that asset have access to? Is it an important asset or not? And then again, you know, that vulnerability, is it high, medium, or low? And add all in that whole entire perspective, threat modeling. You know, like threat modeling, you get the asset. Is it a high or low asset? Is it a high or low vulnerability? If I'm looking into like, man, this is what I want to do. Does
Yeah.
that make sense, everybody?
It makes sense, and I think that would be an application or an application. Basically, an application is equivalent to an asset in our world, and I think we could add an attribute to that for the ranking of that asset to say this is a high value asset. Versus, like you said, the cafeteria menu, which would be a low value asset, that we could go ahead and rank those type of things. So we can, I don't know if we want to assign a dollar amount to it. I know, Tracy, you were kind of talking to Brian Dawson yesterday about that. You know, what is the cost of an exploitation to a company? You know, so you know the cost for the pizza menu being cracked is going to be a low cost to the company, but if you go in and mess with Southwest Airlines booking system, it's a couple $1 billion.
Yeah, we were talking about that in terms of if you're talking to, you're talking to a CEO or who, you know, what would you say is the benefit of implementing something like Ortelius? And, you know, the question is, you know, I wonder now what the Boeing CEO is saying to himself after having a door fly off and land somewhere in Oregon.
Probably
You know,
saying
how do you
this was
explain?
that the accountants weren't trying to be the ones that ran the design process.
So
Did the
how
door
do
really
you,
fly off?
if a CEO, yeah, if a CEO doesn't care, how do you, you know, if they're more concerned about cutting back cost and quality assurance and not worrying about checking all the bolts on doors, how do you convince them to start checking the bolts on doors? And software security is the same way. What do you know, what is the cost and how do we represent that? Is it an emotional cost? Is it a cost that impacts the business's the trust? You know, or is it a financial cost? Do you represent it in dollars? And we didn't come to an answer on that, but I think it's a good question for us to ask ourselves.
So IBM produced they do this actually every year, a cost of a data breach report. Let me get the link and post it here. I think it was something over 9 million was there, you know, and they average it across a lot of incidents, but there we go. But you can read that for free, and it has a methodology in it and asserts the cost. And I think what drives those costs up are things like the Boeing lost, what is it, 18% off its stock price kind of thing. Oops, I sent that to Kate as a direct message. Let's try that again.
There it is. I got it.
So you can take a look at that kind of thing and see what you find there. But there's some credible data. I want to say either Verizon or AT&T did one as well, and I'll bet some of the big consultancies have too.
And it'll be interesting when how we map out that data into Ortelius. You know, do we do a dollar amount? Do we do a ranking system? You know, those type of things. Because it's going to be, I don't think we can go out and derive the data unless we're going to have like Sasha write a chat GPT AI model to go out and figure out the cost of a data breach.
I would say, and Sasha, if you did do that, go out and take a look at a Linean. It is one of the best out there. It encompasses so many questions. Like
Which one is that, Kate?
It's called, I put it in the chat, a Linean.
Okay.
Man, wow, cool.
And it encompassed, it was really extensive. The only problem is that, of course, it's not free. So I don't know, you know, but you get the idea of what they want. And I think you could write your own.
Wow.
The problem is that customers, it really showed an accurate value of so many different things when they were talking about assets and they were talking about, you know, what means something. It took a long time. And so customers sometimes didn't have that patience, but it was really, that's how in depth it was. It was good. It encompassed
cool.
business value, not just a cybersecurity value.
And then one other thing that we talked about on a couple weeks ago was the cost to fix something. And Tony pointed us to the open groups risk. Was it a risk assessment or was it
Called
I think
Open Fair, and it is a way for
That's right.
looking at IT risk. There's actually a project running now on quantifying the risks and estimating things like long tail risk. But I guess the main message is we don't have to do all this ourselves.
right.
But as free as we can get things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, stuff is generally freely available.
Yeah.
Internet's like a vending machine. Just looking for the free ones. The vending machines that just spit out the free chocolates.
Yeah.
Shake it a
Sure,
little.
let us know where those vending machines are.
Yeah, let me know too, Tony, if you find one.
Free chocolates.
Yeah.
Looking
that would
for
be
a free
bad for
beer machine.
me. Beer machine.
Or coffee. Either one. Beer, coffee, or chocolates. Those are my top three.
Yeah, those are good, yeah.
Nice. I like the alien mug. Where
Yeah,
did you get that?
down in Old Town.
Oh. Wasn't sure if you were down in Roswell.
No, amazingly enough, it wasn't ridiculously overpriced either. That's unusual.
Tourist price.
Cool. All right, so
see,
I will make
sorry.
sure I will make
Yeah.
sure that we're scheduled for next week, same time on Thursday, and on that one we'll take a look at from a user persona, and we may have. I'm going to work on creating some skeleton personas based on some of the stuff that Kate sent, as well as some of the other stuff I already know that we need to address. and we'll kind of take a look at it from that point of view. One of the things overall in our UI UX design is we definitely need to keep it simple, and not go right into the weeds with the data. If you look at some of the other products out there, you get into some of the gory metrics. Yeah, they got pretty graphs, but they mean nothing. You know, they're not useful at that point. There is one interesting thing that I think it was Uber. It's either Uber or Airbnb, because they have such a big Kubernetes cluster. And one of the things that they would do in their home office would display the traffic patterns between everything that's happening in all their data centers and all their clusters. It could have been Netflix as well. But basically, they displayed that on in the hallways, and it would create a pretty picture and stuff like that. But what that allowed people to do is when they'd walk by and they'd see that the picture changed, it would raise a red flag to say, okay, why did the picture change? And then they would, it would prompt them to go do some investigation because the picture wasn't consistent like it normally was. So just a little side note on how humans think when we look at patterns. All right, anything else that I may have missed? All right, Arvin, don't forget on your to-do list.
I will do it soon.
Themes and colors.
Yes, I will do it and like schedule a call with, or I will present it to you on Monday or Tuesday
Yeah,
on
send
our
me.
next meeting.
Yeah, send me when you're ready on Discord, and then we can get that into the schedule for everybody to look through.
Yeah, I will do that.
Excellent. Well, thank you everybody for your time today, and take care. Have a good one.
Thank
Yeah, have a
you.
great
Cheers,
day.
everybody.
Thank you.
Cheers.